Hi, it's great to see so many familiar faces here today. You might know me from my work with BPMN MyWig, or perhaps in previous years with the XPDL specifications. Recently I've been working in my consulting organisation No Process, but today I'd like to introduce you to a new name. Omny.link started in late 2013 as a consulting gig with a digital marketing agency who was having a headache scaling and managing their social media campaigns on behalf of their customers. So what's this about zero coding? Well, some of my best friends are coders, but it's hard to imagine how you can run social media campaigns when you have to write and deploy all of that Java. So this is, as Olive puts it, my side of things, and of course it's the right one. It all started with some coffee in the English sunshine. Yes, England does have sunshine too, sometimes. We talked about the need to respond to things rapidly, often with predictable responses, but not always. My customer talked about how he needed to automate things. Sometimes it needed a person to intervene. He was also intrigued by the fact that pretty well every service that he used now seemed to offer an API. He looked at a number of the popular marketing automation tools, and they all seemed to hold promise, but when it came down to it, they seemed to be very keen to tell him how to run his business and to charge a lot of money for it. As he described it, it was like a pair of golden handcuffs. So hopefully you recognize that this is not a classic BPM audience. However, we would be wrong to assume that these folks are not tech savvy. They can do magic with Excel, and they certainly love to do the test and iterate cycles that Neil was telling us about yesterday. There's lots of things I could talk to you about with our solution, but I'm going to highlight decisions for today. A few reasons. DMN is new. We've already seen some introductions. Thank you for all those that primed the audience. We've architected Omny to fit in, wrong slide. So this is a business that is content-led, earning customer attention, not buying it with traditional ads. We found that almost always this means WordPress, and after all, WordPress claimed that in 2014 they ran 1/4 of the web. We've architected Omny to fit in with the WordPress dashboard that our users are already familiar with. Forms are the gateway drug that allow to get the customers into their CRM system and benefit from the workflow. I'm going to walk you through a simplified version of a real case study. That is Firm Gains. It's a business that exists to sell your business. And we provide them with, the site has a number of landing pages, opportunities for prospects to interact with, and we provide flexible customer management module with all the usual entities that you would recognize from other CRM systems. In fact, one of our configuration uses processes that push contact data into Sugar CRM. First step will be to build a form. We'll be leveraging the domain model to deliver those fields that are in it. The JavaScript client library that we provide enhances the forms with some of the things that you expect in nice rich forms, labels, hints, validation. Now we get to the decision table part. This is the critical feature for the marketing folks. Because they like to be able to use conditions like how long is it since the user registered or logged in, what messages have we sent them already. This particular type of decision table that I'm going to look at is what we call single hit policy. Thank you, Giro, for the definition earlier. We also support multiple hit policies as well. Since there's many different ways of presenting a decision table, it might be worth just sort of walking through how we do it. Top half of the table is the conditions, bottom half is conclusions. Each column represents one rule, and as I mentioned, it's a single hit policy. Once we've looked at the campaign's performance, the digital marketeer can adjust the conditions and the conclusions, and we'll look at how we can do that. This is all done in a production setting. This is, in fact, the decision table that they use to drive their follow-up emails. And the interesting thing is that there are security constraints around it, but we found they like to turn them off and live on the edge. So it's very much that test and iterate model. In summary, some forms, tasks, decision tables, business processes, customer management. So this is the Firm Gains site. As I said, it's that business of earning customer content rather than expecting to just sort of drive them through with ads like television, so on and so forth. Just to comment actually whilst I'm doing this. So this is for the use of the marketeers, but we put it into their site. We having discussions about whether it's better to put it into the dashboard or whether it's better to be in the front of the site, but this is where it is for today. So looking at the domain model. So these are the entities that we have: contact, account, activity, notes on the account, documents that are referenced, all fairly general stuff. Users are there so that we can allocate work in the usual ways, and emails, the crucial part of running the email campaign, of course, is which emails we've sent before and so on and so forth. So if I go here, so I guess what I can tell you about the domain model is that the entities are somewhat standard, and as I mentioned, we have done a version that will push those contact information into Sugar CRM. We've recently chosen to go with a sort of a lightweight version of our own, and that's something that we talk to customers on an individual basis. Because we have that abstraction, we've got all of the standard fields, names, telephone numbers, emails, and so on and so forth. But you can also go in there and add the extra fields that are required for a specific business. So in FirmGains' case, we had to gather a bunch of valuation information. What's your turnover, basically aimed at calculating EBITDA, and it's mostly the financials that we needed to add. We get past the domain model, I can show you forms and how it's nice and easy to drag fields such as the usual things you would try and gather from prospect onto a form within the WordPress dashboard. It takes all of the validation information that's necessary from the domain model. So we know an email address is an email address. We know a telephone number is a telephone number. We can also go and customize and say, well, actually, in this particular case, FirmGains only operates in the UK, so we're not interested in any American phone numbers, thank you. We will actually refine that down to the ones that we expect to get. We then have, I don't know how much guys are familiar with WordPress. I suppose it's something that all of us see. WordPress has this notion of pages. Forms and pages is, again, a level of indirection so that you can reuse the same form on multiple pages. And oftentimes, a lot of the interactions that we're gathering with customers, it really does just boil down to that first name, last name, email address. I will show you perhaps some other ones as well where we've done more sophisticated things like a dashboard to gather the full valuation information of the business that we're trying to sell. Once we go past forms, I will be talking to you about decision tables. And once again, I will be able to show you how very easy it is to drag the fields from the domain model into the decision table to define conditions, such as I mentioned in my presentation to start off the time that has passed since the user's last login. This is our WordPress dashboard. These are the Omny.link forms. I'm going to cheat and use the one that I prepared earlier in best Boy Scout fashion. We can see, what should we say, phone number is something that is in the domain model, so we can pull those up. Contacts shows me the whole list, if I can spell it. And here you get a sort of a semi-WYSIWYG view of the form. Now this is where it looks like that because when we go to actually add it into the form, the JavaScript enhances it at runtime. So I'm going to show you one of the things that the site does to engage people is to provide advice on how to sell, and there's some lovely infographics here, which we're going to give the opportunity for the user to supply us their email address at that point. So I need to go to the page, business, selling business game, isn't it? The business selling game. in here I need to put the, so shortcodes are something that might count as programming depending on how you want to treat it. Basically, WordPress people are comfortable. They come with square brackets, and you normally keep one to hand to copy and paste, which is exactly what I'm going to do. There's a variety of parameters that we can use, such as where you'd like to redirect to afterwards, whether it will be handled by a workflow, or whether it will be handled just by a simple email. These are important pages because understanding that business of engaging with the audience, it really matters which page they were engaging with, so you know which are your best copywriters and who you should be encouraging to do, which content you should do more of. When we save this, which apparently I can't do, can I exit Dropbox? Update. We now go back to this page, I refresh it, and we should see a lovely form come up. Now this was just a simple form that I did, and I'm actually going to cheat just to show you some of the little nice things like the hint text and fields, validations. Looks like I didn't specify that one as a phone number, did I? But there's an email address. Okay. By default, we put in a process handler that will display the contact. I prepared one earlier on. So this is task list coming from your from a default process handler. So this is just a task list like everybody has. We can from here launch the contact and see it, possibly. Is it because I'm already open? Okay, well, if not, then I can do it from here. This is the customer management system that we've sort of built in. It's the user interface, as I said, could be looking onto Sugar or Salesforce as well. So this is sort of intended really to layer on top of the CRM system, and we offer the out-of-the-box one for interest too. Mr. Montgomery Burns is interested in selling a used nuclear power station, and he's got he's supplied us a certain amount of information. The pieces I wanted to highlight are these ones here. So when you're running mail campaigns, if you click on one of those links, as you probably know in your email, then there are a piece of information there that tell which campaign and which keywords and all of that stuff. So we slurp those in as part of the process too. So we can then go and use analytics to decide which campaigns are working best. Time for a decision table, I think. Okay, so it's just a nice little web interface. We can access the domain model again, so I'm going to call this my personalized email follow-up. We have conditions here. Again, we sort of pull in what we're interested in. Now, I said something about time since login. Maybe we should use time since, well, whatever. So obviously, we've got some sort of responsiveness things that we need to work with there. So less than 7 days, this is the sort of thing that you've seen, the sort of expressions that are coming through. Some are DMN, some are ones that we've extended. In response to, so this is the single hit. If the time since the contact's login is less than 7 days, then we won't bug them. So we will use email template name of nothing. I can add an additional rule. If it's greater than equal to 7 days, then we will send them missed you email. Now I'm using this slightly strange syntax because that's what WordPress expects, all lowercase with hyphens. And I can save that. And back in my dashboard, if I refresh this one, we should, well, you see one that I prepared earlier there, so we may now see 2. Or we may not, because it doesn't connect. Okay, so one last time, we're going to try and open the more complicated one, and we can look at some of the level of complexity that is actually used by the marketeers without any coding. Oh, it did pop up. Okay. Now you can see these things become complex quickly, and they love that, right? Because it's like Excel. I can deal with 50 columns and manage all of that in my mind. Or perhaps they can't, and so one of the things that we do is validation to check where there are missed cases. So you can see that we have set up a cascade effect here that basically is choosing which email to send to somebody based on what we've sent them already, how long ago since we've seen them, since they performed a valuation of their business, depending on what valuation we attributed to their business. And so we gradually work our way along this line. And at some point, right at the very end, we say, OK, we give up. And the last condition is put a task in the work queue of the sales manager, the account manager, who will decide whether to mark them cold or try a telephone call or something of that kind. Now, I've probably gone absolutely horrible with the timings, although 7 o'clock sounds promising. So, can I take any questions?